The City of Washington Board of Adjustment is called to order. We'll have the roll call, please.
Gwen Montal.
Here.
Dale Schillick.
Here.
Alan Whitworth.
Here.
Lloyd Meester.
Here.
Susan Harms. Sal Maniaci.
Here.
You'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the August 13th meeting?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, we got the first one on the agenda. Sal?
Yes, so the first one is for a variance. Well, I'll give a little preference here because both requests are very similar tonight. They're pertaining to LED electronic message display boards. In March of 2017, the city adopted a new zoning code, and included in that zoning code was a new sign ordinance. Previously, we did not have specific regulations, before March of 2017, specific regulations on electronic message display boards, those LED screens you see on signs. We had a consultant that did most of our zoning code and then submitted some requirements for this. We tweaked it a little bit, but for the most part took their recommendations and adopted it as part of the code as a whole. It's a 400-page document. And in that, it added regulations for these display signs, display boards, one of which is that they have to be, in all zone districts, no larger than 18 square feet, and then also they cannot be more than 12 feet in the air. So they have to be closer to the ground and they have to be smaller. I will say that 90% probably, I mean, it's a tough one to go without looking at every single sign, but most of the signs in city limits right now that are like these electronic message display boards are larger than 18 square feet. So that's how you see all the ones around town that do not meet these regulations. It's because this is a new rule that was adopted in March of 2017, and to be honest, this is the first one we've had come in since the adoption of that code. So that's the first two, and that's why we're here tonight, is because of that new rule, and both of these signs are larger. So with that being said, the first request is for a new monument sign that is proposed for Westplex South, which is at 6244 Highway 100. You can see here on the screen, and I'm sorry, I don't know why the TV isn't hooked up correctly, so we'll have to turn behind you tonight. But this is at the intersection of the High Street extension and Highway 100. So this is right across the street is the new Casey's, and then this is where the new construction is for Westplex South. That's currently being built, and they're requesting to place a new monument sign for this whole development. So right now there's a sign here on site. Actually, I think it's further east. It'll be torn down, and then it'll be placed right here in the center. This is actually an older map. This is now one parcel here. And that's where the construction is being done. And so here is the proposed sign. So the actual square footage of the sign meets the code. Along Highway 100 and along Highway 47, you are permitted 250 square feet for a shopping center, a complex where all of the tenants can share that 250 square feet, however the owner wants. But because they are requesting two variances for this specific location. One is this sign is approximately, hold on, let me pull it up. I think this one is 50 square feet for the LED sign. And also the bottom is 17 feet in the air. So that is above, obviously, the 18 square feet for a sign and the 12 feet for height for an LED board. And so they are requesting, obviously, to have it be built as shown with the sign, with the LED on top, and then obviously the size that goes the full width of the sign there. Other than that, it does meet our code requirements. It's just tonight we're just talking about the LED sign itself. So I'll take any questions if you have them.
How many square feet did you say the LED part was?
This one is 50 square feet.
50?
50, 50. Yeah, it looks like it's 60 inches by 120 inches.
I've seen a couple different numbers. Like in the
Oh,
front thing,
again.
it says 176 square feet.
So, yes, when the letter went out, the application that was submitted with the variance application, which is in the packet, shows that total square footage. That is the square footage of the entire sign.
Okay.
And so when we based the letter on the info that's on the application, and unfortunately, I didn't see that until after it went out and realized that the application was filled out for the entire sign, when in reality, the variance is just for the LED board.
Do you have a comparison in another area that has a sign this size?
I don't have a picture on here. I know of one that's newer that everyone's familiar with. Well, there's actually one right across the street here.
Remax?
That's larger than 18 square feet. I don't have the square footage on it, but it's larger than the 18 square feet that's permitted now. And then one of the newer ones, Hillerman's put one up that is larger as well in the past few years. It was before the March 2017 code, but that was the most recent one that was put up. So I don't know. We don't have a shopping center like this is a size of this sign. A sign of this size that's similar is the Phoenix Center sign, and that obviously doesn't have the LED board. So I couldn't point one out that's this tall for you.
What's the reasoning behind the 12-foot height?
I believe it was just to safer conditions for passerby, for drivers passing by. That it's just not as much of a distraction to keep it lower to the ground. That was something the consultant put in, and we adopted as part of the.
So it's a high-traffic area, and you want people to look at it, but has any thought been given to all of the high school drivers who are right there? And the accidents that could happen as a result of it? Is it a concern?
It very well could be, yeah.
You said this code was just established March of last year.
Yeah, March of
There
2017.
was no code before that?
No, so prior to that, we did not have specific requirements for LED signs. It was just, the 250 square foot for a sign was still there, but it did not have specific regulations for an LED sign. That was added.
Well, if we don't follow the code as set forth by the city council, why even have the code?
Well, that's a question, but that's why this variance board exists. Every variance that comes here is a variation from the code. I mean, this is no different from a setback variance we've gotten or other signs. I mean, when someone requests that they don't want to build a structure or a sign per the code, this is the process that they go through to you all. And it does not go to Planning and Zoning or City Council. If it's denied, the recourse is they either redesign per the code or they go to circuit court.
Yeah, but don't you think this will open up a can of worms? Everybody in the future will come
To this board.
to the variance, to the board.
For an LED sign, probably. I do think I could concede that it's worth looking at if that 18 square foot is too small. Obviously, all of our existing signs, or LED signs in the city limits are larger than that. We took our consultant's word for it and adopted it when it probably should have been larger, quite honestly. But that's what, whenever this was looked at, it was the code. There was a lot of discussion on regulating the actual brightness and the color and how the transitions went from image to image. And quite honestly, at council, it was never really discussed that 18 square feet. It kind of just was, that was put on the side, and there was a lot of focus on the other issues. So, now I don't want to speak for council. There very, very well could have been some council members who looked at that and said, no, we're fine with 18 square feet. It just wasn't discussed publicly, I should say.
Sal, I sort of agree with the gentleman over here that gave his opinion, but I think that every variation for electronic signs is going to come before this board.
Unless the code has changed, that's correct.
Well, unless they change the ordinance.
Yeah, either the ordinance has to be changed or they have to be smaller signs, smaller LED screens.
And right now, who determines the size of the LED? The manufacturer, right?
Yeah, the
Does
applicant.
this have anything to do with the LED sign? Is there a code against brightness?
We do have some regulations. They have to submit some specs that, you know, there's a dusk to dawn, and it doesn't, they're called NITs. It's in the code that they have to meet all of that. So we weren't concerned about the specs of the sign being too bright or anything, because they have to show that it's adjustable and that the brightness at night or at daytime, because you have to turn the brightness up during the day so you can see it, that it's not going to be the same at night. It has to be adjustable so it's not blinding, that kind of thing. And, you know, there's no reason to believe this sign won't meet that. You know, they show those specs, but it's just the size and height in this location.
But depending upon the customer that's building this thing, this sign could be of any size. It could be 50 square feet, it could be 60, it could be 80, it could be 30, whatever the customer and the manufacturer suggests that's best for the
sign.
particular project. You know, I think it puts the board in a bad position.
Right. So, well, do you have any other questions of me? This is a public hearing, so.
Yeah, sure, you can approach the board.
My name is Jeff Wilson, and I'm coming up here shortly for a monument sign. I'm going to put up. Sal, my question is your question, Ardell, is they can put up any size sign they want. That's not true at all. The size of your sign is based on the building size, right? Or you can't put
Not for a monument sign.
not for a monument.
No, so a building sign that goes onto your building is based, you're allowed 5% of the building. A monument sign along Highway 100 or Highway 47, you're allowed 250 square feet
Okay.
along the highways. It's
I
smaller.
wasn't aware of that. I thought it had to be in specs with the size of the building. My other question is, though, is when you adopted these new sign laws, the consultant that came in and made these recommendations, was he aware that he made every other sign within the city limits illegal at that point? I mean, what's going to happen when the library sign burns out? Are they going to be able to put a new one in there? That's a Daktronics board, and I'm pretty familiar
Right.
with those. Are they going to have to adhere to the new code so the library won't be able to put their sign back up?
If it were to be replaced, correct.
Same thing with Hillerman's or every other LED within this area. That when they chose to go to 18 square feet, that's not very big at all. And what I'm proposing, and even with this one at a 5 by 10, it isn't that grandiose at all. I think what was in question here is the size of the actual sign, because there was a lot of misinformation that was in the paper, that was in the packets that you all got. I guess I'll wait to speak to mine once, but those are the only questions I had, is I wanted to know if we continue with the code the way it is, and the council doesn't adopt a new code or go back to what it was or a more reasonable size. I just wanted to know what was gonna happen to all the Mercy's boards that don't meet. They no longer meet it, all right? None of the signs. I'm not aware of one single digital display within Washington that meets these new codes. And I've gone out and looked at all of them. Okay? Do you all have any questions for me? Thank you.
And I think that's correct, and there's probably that is a decision for Planning and Zoning makes a recommendation on code amendments and council adopts it. Tonight, really the only question is, should these specific cases be granted variances in order to build larger? And then if the code should be amended, that could, that's a topic that's going to be discussed at P&Z later tonight anyway, but are brought up. It's not on the agenda, but.
Ben, do you want to
Sorry, ladies.
state your name?
Ben Ziegler, Ziegler Signs. Just to give you a background of all this, I worked with Darren back in 20 years ago almost in helping to develop a sign code in Washington, because when I started the sign industry, there wasn't any sign code in Washington. And Darren and I sat down, we went through a lot of other sign codes to kind of compare to, and then as this industry has grown, I'm blessed to be able to serve on the ISA Sign Board, International Sign Association, which we cover basically international sign codes and sign in our association. And government regulations and sign code is probably the top of the list. I mean, I am probably have a business license with close to 600 municipalities and deal with the sign codes over 600 municipalities and thousands across the nation that we have to deal with sign codes. So I'm very aware of this whole thing. I've had municipalities that have boards like this that every single sign is a variance because the code needed to be amended. And it was, and it freed up so much time. And I had, with the new regulations that were sent out, Sal had sent them to me, we went through them, I sent them to the legal team at ISA, who basically does this free of charge for all municipalities, and they go through and help them develop a fair sign code that's fair for the community and fair for the consumers that are utilizing it. And they had gone through the sign code that was proposed, and they had quite a few things, about 3 or 4 things that legality and just were going to be very difficult to manage. And one of them was being the hold time for the LED message centers, and the other one was being the square footage. Because there's really no way, I mean, square footage on a sign is based upon speed, viewability distance, location, highway, grades and elevations, trees, I mean, all different types of stuff. There's no way you can put a box around something and say this is what it has to be. I've seen this happen in many, many municipalities and have put moratoriums on signs and say, hey, you can't have LEDs anymore, they don't work. And now those city municipalities are thriving with not big gaudy signs, but tasteful signs. All the signs that we, as myself as a sign designer, look at is I look at speed, distance from readability, intersections and stuff like that. And this sign particular right here, I mean, this sign, I mean, I've done almost 99% of the signs in Washington that are LED. And this is a 5x10, Baker Franklin County is a 5x10, Bank of Washington's a 5x10, the business center is a 4x8. There is not a single sign. 18 square foot would not be even legible. I wouldn't even put it up. It's too hard to read. You're going to try to focus on it, and you don't want somebody to spend 10 seconds looking at a sign. You want it to have a good 3 to 4 second read time on your drive, and that's why it's important to have it up to where you can have a good, clear 3 to 4 second forward-looking read time, and then you go by. The whole height thing, I don't know where that came from, because honestly, you're better off with an LED sign higher than you are lower for intensity purposes. When you look at a TV straight on, it's bright. When you walk over here at an angle, it's not as bright. Same concept. It's more intense lower. So
What's your comment on Casey's sign?
what, the LEDs?
Yeah, as low as it is to the ground.
Terrible.
You can't hardly read it.
And actually, it's a strain for you to look down at that. And to me, looking down while you're driving or looking this is worse than looking up and forward. And that's been, you asked about safety. There's a huge, Texas A&M did a huge study on traffic safety.
What year?
What year? I'll have to send to you. It's about a 642-page document. So it's
I've looked at some.
yeah, and they've done a huge safety analysis on do LED signs cause a hazard, and it was proven that they do not. But still, with any legible driving, with anything, signs in general, I mean, you can sit and look at a street sign going off the highway too long and have an accident. So it's legibility and time to look at the sign. Size makes a big difference in that. If it's too small, it's too hard to read, you spend too long looking at it, and that becomes a distraction and a danger. So size is important for us for readability. This size right here is no different. I mean, I could have a 250 square foot sign, 50 foot tall there. It doesn't need to be that big. Jeff's sign that he's looking at, it could be 250 square foot and 50 foot tall. It's 69 square feet and 12 foot tall. So it doesn't need to be as big as people have done in the past here and different signs, but the square footage should not be calibrated into a square foot allowance because it doesn't work for all factors. And I sat in front of this podium right here in council, and we talked about that, and they agreed. I just feel it was an accident that line was built in with the other things that was asked, and I just feel that was missed. And that's why we did these variances, because to change the sign code is going to take a long time. And these guys have buildings going up, and they want to get this. So this was the only way that we could get this moving on, was to do a variance. Because I will work as hard as I have to get this square footage changed on the sign code and the height. I mean, I'll pull all the guns and work as hard as I have to, because it's just, I'm not trying to make Washington Las Vegas by any means. I'm trying to make it look nice. And I don't think any sign that we've done in this town, besides one that we didn't do, has thrown some, not so good favors into what it is. And we don't do a ton of signs. I mean, most people you say can have a big sign. Yeah, you can put up a 250 square foot sign if you wanted to, but nobody's going to spend that kind of money. They could, but they're probably not going to. I mean, that's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're probably not going to do it. It doesn't make sense. So, to that extent. So as far as the square footage allowance, I'm moving to try to get that changed, but for this variance, for us to continue with Rick's project, because if not, I can make that sign a lot bigger and have a lot more stuff on it, but it then becomes gaudy looking, and that just defeats the purpose. This, I can make them smaller, you can put more tenants on there, it's safe, it's easy to control, and it looks presentable. As far as the height goes, moving it down to 12 foot, a van parks in front of there, now you're blocking it, and you're trying to see what's over there. It becomes, I think that whole height thing, I never understood that, and nobody else did either. So that's why I'm asking for the variance for the square footage to be allowed to where it's 50, and it's actually 40. If you look at it, it's 4'9" by 9'5". It's like 46, 44. We rounded up to 50 just to make sure with the borders and stuff. And then the height, you know, I mean, I can make it lower. I can move it to the bottom. I can shorten the brick down. It makes the sign about 25 foot, but it looks out of proportion. I mean, what we do is also design and elements, you know, it needs to be the 10-foot width for the readability. So if you move it down to the height it needs to be, it becomes short and squatty and doesn't look appropriate. So,
Ben, without a good reason for us to approve this, you know, the only thing we're doing is opening up the doors as well. You gave it to Zoigan, he put the sign up. He's far larger than what the code says, or Jeff's, he's larger than what the code says. I think this has got to be referred back to the city council. They got to make some decisions, not throw it to the Board of Adjustment and expect us to make every damn decision that's going to come before this board as far as electronic signs are concerned.
I agree, and I've sat in probably 100 variance meetings throughout the courts of St. Louis and St. Peter's and St. Charles, and I've never done one in Washington. It's the first time for me. Variances are what I've been told is an allowance to do something per your decision, one time or every time. It's your decision. Ideally, I don't want to have to come up here for a variance for every single sign. And the way the code is written right now, with heights and square footages, I will, and I don't want to do this. It's time consuming. It's not been like that, and realistically, every single sign, maybe one, the one on Fifth Street, is non-compliant, non-conforming, including the Bank of Washington, including the library. Every sign is not correct. And as far as the lighting goes, which that was a huge topic of the council, you know, ISA put together a lighting manual on, it's a very beautiful document they put together, a nighttime brightness level, and they had a doctor, I forget his name, Dr. Ian Lewin of Lighting Sciences to develop this lighting standard that's used across hundreds of municipalities. It's a standard for lighting for LED message centers, and it was given out, it was just created when they did this. So it wasn't even, it was like a week from being published, but it was available when they looked at it. But you know, the consultants, they have their thing, but this is a guide for measuring and doing this. And we talked about the brightness. The specs that he gave us for the lumens aren't even true specs. I mean, 300 nits, your TV is more than 300 nits in certain examples. So, I mean, it's no sign in Washington. I mean, the signs that we produce, like box signs, are 400 lumens, you know, which are equivalents of nits. It's just different. So we control the lighting, and we stand by this because this is who our industry is, and nobody likes a bright sign that hurts your eyes, and it just causes negativity, and we don't want that. That's why they're all controlled, and if the photocell goes bad, we fix it. So there's a lot of things that we want to try to fix with the code.
Yeah.
Are you saying that your lighting, the sign lighting is not, our codes don't include those recommendations?
Well,
Are they
these
more
recommendations were given,
conservative,
but they
or-
weren't adopted. Because what the code, the 3,000 nits, I mean, boards don't even come 3,000 nits or 5,000 nits. They come 9,000 nits. There's not one sign in this town that's 5,000 nits, so that's wrong. Every sign, I mean, they don't produce that. At 5,000 nits, you wouldn't be able to see the board during the daylight, so that's wrong.
So is that an adjustment that needs to be made as well?
It needs to be taken out and it needs to follow this, which is a...
Right, I get it, but as a board of adjustment, not only are we talking sign differences, we're talking lighting differences as well.
I want to see a sign code that works for everybody, that can be, I mean, my whole thing at the beginning when they talked about this, there's no way that they're going to regulate any of this. None. There's no way. You're not going to get out there and test a lumen meter because there's so many things that goes into that with lumens and lux is based upon surrounding lighting, based upon elevation, based upon distance, based upon, I mean, there's so much that goes into that. You can't just point a meter at a sign and say this is what it is. So that's where this came into effect. And there's just a lot of things that honestly I felt the same way, as if the code's written and it's not being, controlled, then what's the point of it? And I don't want that to be taken in the wrong sense. I want the code to be a solid code that works for everybody, but yet has some regulation to it. And I think we were very close to what we had before. The lighting control, that's fine. There's a document, they can control that. They can say, hey, it's too bright, turn it off, whatever, control it. The square footage didn't change, but the message boards, that's the whole thing that got screwed up in there. Because most companies are going away from big traditional signs like that and going with a simpler, smaller message board sign. I mean, the state of Missouri, MoDOT, freaked out when digital billboards came out. They hated it. They don't want them. They don't want nothing to do it. Now they're pushing for them because they can look at Washington walking in. There's 12 billboards when you come into Washington. You can put two digital billboards in that front thing and have every one of those tenants on there in two signs. They're changing up the way they do because they're realizing, hey, we can get rid of all these signs we have and have one nice looking sign with multiple same information on it. And that's the same thing that with Rick's is you have all the tenants that he's going to have, plus he's trying to get a restaurant to come in there and daily specials and stuff like that. That drives economics for these people. And we've done some restaurants in St. Louis, and they will not, Walnut Grill is one of them, they will not open a store up in a city or municipality that can't have a message board because that's their biggest driving factor for their lunch specials and their dinners and their happy hour is a message board so they can give their dailies out. They will not go to a municipality that will not allow it. So it's a huge driving factor for economics. And
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Didn't change my mind.
Didn't change your mind. Sorry.
I still say that this is, but this is something that belongs at the city council level. They need to revise it. They need to give us something by which we can come in and say yes or no to. Right now, we don't have anything to say yes or no to. Just that's what Ben wants, that's what Jeff wants, and we can either go yes or no on it. So, yeah,
Can I
Jeff?
speak to that just a little bit?
Yeah.
It was my understanding coming to the Board of Adjustment, when I read the first part on what you all are actually here for, is if it places an undue hardship on me. Guess what? Me going to a static board places an undue hardship on me. I put on, at no cost, Medicare meetings for Mercy, Mercy's employees. People want to know what time my meetings are and things like that. For me to invest the kind of money that I've done into my neighborhood and my community, if I just put up a static billboard and I'm unable to display those things, that puts a hardship on me.
Well, there are other ways to communicate.
And I'm on that. I'm on the radio, I'm in the paper, I'm up, all those things.
Jeff, do you have a problem with the council approving this?
Oh, no, I don't have a problem. For me, it's a time factor. I've been building this for 8 months, and this was just brought to our attention a month ago. Prior to that, I drive through the town of Washington. I haven't read the city of Washington sign code. I just know that Hillerman's put one up, that the library put them up, and they're all over throughout my community. And then when it came time for me to go to it, they say, oh, we changed that code. Now it's 18 square feet. You can't do it. That's the part that bothered me. That's all I got to say. Yes,
But that's the part that.
yeah, I understand what you're saying, Ardell. It's not your responsibility.
That determines whether we vote yes or we vote no.
Mm-hmm.
The 18 square feet.
Right, unless you give it a variance. I understand.
But as I said before, there's no criteria for giving it a variance, except that's what you want, that's what the next customer will want. There's always a reason for it, but it's already outside the 18 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Well, just to
All
clarify,
of
the criteria, I mean, that's what I read here every week is, or by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property at the time of the original adoption of the regulations, or by reasons of exceptional topographical conditions, or other extraordinary or exceptional situation or condition of a specific piece of property which conditions are not generally prevalent in the neighborhood, the strict application of the area regulations of this title would result in peculiar and exceptional difficulties to or exceptional and undue hardship upon the owner of the property. And I'm just pointing that out because if this were to go to the Court of Appeal, the Circuit Court, because the whole Board of Adjustment is to keep it non-political, where it doesn't go to council on a case-by-case basis. If it's appealed after this level, it goes to the Circuit Court, and that's what they look at. Does it meet any of those hardships, is essentially. And I just, because sometimes I think that is kind of lost on the public and the board where, you know, if it's not a controversial issue, then sometimes it can go through. When reality, is there a peculiar hardship is really what the board is meant to vote upon. Which I'm not trying to persuade you one way or the other. That's just what the code
Is there
says.
anybody here that wishes to speak on the subject in the crowd? Steve, come forward. State your name, your address.
Yeah, when we get to that case.
Good evening. My name is Steve Reether, and I live at 3 Scenic Drive in Washington, Missouri. The gentleman said that all these signs are not within the city code. When those signs were put up, they were within the city code then. I want to make sure that we understand that. I'm not here to criticize Jeff Wilson. I want you to know that. He's building a beautiful building. We expect him to be a great neighbor. He has the okay to put up the sign, and some folks have seen it, and most of them like it. I just saw it tonight for my first time. My only reservation is the lighted part of the signage, going from the 18-foot code to what he wants, almost a 62-foot code. As you stated, if the code is 18 feet, then perhaps the city should stick with the code. Do we need another lighted distraction driving through town? If you grant the variance on this sign, as you said, you will set a precedent for every commercial building that would be built or renovated from the north city limits to the south, to the west city limits to the east, and they'll all want some variance on the 18-foot lighted display. The consultants, I think what Sal said, in March of 2017 came up with the code that the city adopted. This one here is too tall and too much. Again, I don't have a great concern with Jeff Wilson's building, or even of the signage, other than the lighted part of it. My greater concern is the requested variance for the signage out on Highway 100. If you're going to go from an 18-square-foot lighted display out there, and in the paper said it was going to go to 176 square foot, my calculation, that was 10 by 17 or 8 by 22. That's a pretty big size lighted display. I find out tonight that it's not that large. Either way, that is taller than the code. It's bigger than the lighted part of the code. It is a huge lighted billboard on Highway 100. I'm going to assume that the lighted signage can be viewed from both sides of the signage. The intersection of Highway 100 and 47, the main intersection to our beautiful city, is overfilled with billboards that size already. Again, if you grant variance for every commercial development, every commercial development will want some sort of variance. I envision, in my lifetime, a row of billboards going along Highway 100 all the way past Bluff Road, one after the other, as big, if not bigger, with the lighted signage. All of them will have had to get a variance from this board. Granting this variance, you will have to give them their variance. I'm a concerned citizen of Washington, Missouri. I respectfully request that you investigate the long-term potential consequences of granting these two variances. The city officials, in my opinion, need to be stewards of our town. I don't want Washington, Missouri to be the crossroads of billboards in Franklin County. And I don't think you do either as stewards of our great community. So again, I respectfully request that we adhere to the building code that was just adopted in March of 2017. And do you have any questions for me?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes?
We see Jeff's, I live right across the street.
Straight,
It's two different cases, so that's,
Because we keep talking about Jeff's,
yeah. Yeah, so we gotta get through this case first, have a vote, and then we'll do the second case.
okay, is there any further discussion concerning Ben's proposal?
You know, Ben Ziegler again, per city code, this sign could be 50 foot tall and 250 square foot per city code, which is double the size of that, over double the size of that. That's per code, and I could do that. The money
A
that,
non-digital sign.
non-digital sign.
Right.
Big old lighted cabinets all the way up, monster, just like Phoenix Center. I can do that sign right there, per city code, for probably less money than what that is. But I don't want to, because that defeats, to me, it becomes, like we're talking about, it's too big, too gaudy, so to say, for the corridor that it's in, and right by the highway. That's why we go with these signs, because per code, we can do that. And that's why we go with that. So to kind of say that it's not per code, and these aren't billboards, so that's a big terminology. Billboard's a totally different scenario. These are lighted pylon signs that are tenant signs on premise. So that's something I want to think about. The variance aspect is a one-by-one cases. You know, we're asking you tonight to approve this variance because A, we are going to have a meeting tonight with the planning and zoning, and I've already talked to the ISA team and everything, and they'll fly down here and we'll get this straightened out. We will, because I feel it was a mistake, because it was one line item that was missed that was part of another one, and it shouldn't have been in there. It was just a mistake. Technicality, so be it. It's still going to comply with the square footage allowance, and it still will be there, but we will work through that. I mean, I don't want to have to go to circuit. I don't want to have to get legal, and I don't want to have to do all that stuff. It's a pain for everybody. The variance that we're applying for right now today is just to let these projects go through, but there's still a case-by-case basis, but can't promise you, but I will work diligently to say that this never happens again, because we're going to try to get the code changed. But if that takes, I don't know how long that takes.
2 months.
2
3.
months. These guys are without signs. There's a construction process to this, and now all that concrete and everything, it would delay and cause a huge effect and hardship to these guys, not to be able to open with signs, not to be able their tenants to have signs. I mean, it's a huge hardship. And the size of the sign is the hardship because they can't read it.
Will it take you 2 months to build it?
No, I'll get it built fast. 4 weeks, 5 weeks. And now I've already had this in the system for almost 2 weeks, 3 weeks now, since we started this and got the approval and the okay. I didn't want to order this stuff because that's just not proper. You know, I have to make sure it's right, because these are expensive. I don't want to order something and then get stuck with it, because these are built specifically for the tenants. These aren't just and manufactured. And I mean, I could look at going different ways, or I could just say, you know what, let's just put every tenant on that sign and we'll go up another, 25 feet and another 100 and something square feet. But I don't want to do that, because that's not, all that's going to do is, we know what that does. And I'm trying to make it look good and acceptable for the community, but also get the job done without having to wait till the end of the year. And have the customer without a sign, and restaurant not wanting to move in there because they don't have any signage. So that is the one thing that I would ask for, is the variances. This is just to get us through these 2 projects, and then we will address this at a higher level and a higher power through the council to get this code amended, so it's not going to put this in a position that has to be varianced every time.
Jeff, other than time, do you have a problem going before the council?
Oh, no.
Other
You
than
mean
time?
other than time? We're pretty much ready to go on
Yeah.
Allen. And, the busiest time of my year in my industry starts October 1st. And the plans were to have this thing up and running weeks ago, to display our dates and everything that we do within my agency. So if I wait and it's another 2 months or 3 months before it gets fixed, open enrollment's over.
Well, how have you handled it previously? You've had your, yeah, your open enrollment. You've had your business for many years.
Through mailings, on radio, on my digital billboard as you come into Washington.
Right.
All media.
I just keep getting stuck on the undue hardship upon.
Well, I bought this property in 2009, Gwen, with the intentions of doing exactly what I'm doing.
Right.
And it was gonna have a board just like the one that was designed years ago. in
Sure.
front of it. So for me, the undue hardship is the timing of this, and the fact that it met all the other codes previously. And I feel like it slipped through.
Sure.
Hey Jeff, can you go up to the mic? They can't hear you.
I'm pretty much finished now. Thank you.
Well, we need to hear you in a minute.
Jeff, would you have any objection if we voted on both variances at the same time?
Well, we gotta get,
Yes.
they're two different resolutions, so I gotta read them separately, so.
As for the sake of.
So can I go ahead and
Yes,
read
you
the
can
first
go
one?
ahead and read it.
First one, okay. Whereas the board does find and determine that the property in question located at 6244 Highway 100 is within the city limits of the city of Washington and is located in a C2 General Commercial Zoning District pursuant to the city's zoning ordinance. And whereas City Code Section 405.085 D2, the area of the electronic display panel should not be more than 18 square feet in size and 50% of the total area of the sign, whichever is more restrictive. In City Code Section 405.085 D3A, 12 feet maximum height were located adjacent to major and collector streets and highways. Whereas under Section 475.040 of the Washington City Code, the Board of Adjustment has the following power related to variations. Where by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property at the time of the original adoption of the regulations, or by reasons of exceptional topographical conditions or other extraordinary or exceptional situation or condition of a specific piece of property, which conditions are not generally prevalent in the neighborhood, the strict application of the area regulations of this title would result in peculiar and exceptional difficulties to or exceptional and undue hardship upon the owner of such property. The board is hereby empowered to authorize upon an appeal relating to such property a variation from such strict application so as to relieve such difficulties or hardships. Now therefore be it resolved that the request to increase the size of the message display board to 50 square feet and to place it 17 feet in the air is hereby granted, provided that all other ordinances and regulations of the city of Washington are met. The city engineer is hereby directed to issue a building permit as described in accordance with the resolution decision. Ardell Schelick.
No.
Alan Whitworth.
No.
Lloyd Meisner.
No.
Gwen Montal.
No.
By your vote, you did not approve the variance. We'll move on to case number 180902.
All right. And so the next submittal is similar. Obviously, we've already been talking about it, but it is on the parcel across from Duncan Avenue. So even though it's addressed off of Rainbow Drive, that's the address of the business, it is located on the western side of Duncan Avenue. It's highlighted on that parcel there. Here is a rendering of the sign. It is not quite as big as the last one. I think it is 44 square feet. Well, 57 inches by 113, so 40 square feet.
40.
So there's not a height issue on this one. It's just the size of the LED sign itself. And then there is a rendering of it with perspective of it to the street, as well as the height of it. So.
Okay. Jeff, is there anything further that you want to say in your behalf as far as the variance is concerned? Anybody in the audience wish to speak as far as this particular sign is concerned? If not, we'll read the...
Whereas the board does find and determine that the property in question located along 802 Rainbow Drive is within the city limits of the city of Washington and is located in a C4 commercial zoning district pursuant to the city's zoning ordinance. And whereas the city code section 405.085 D2, the area of electronic display panels should not be more than 18 square feet in size or 50% of the total area of the sign, whichever is more restrictive. Whereas under section 475.040 of the Washington City Code, the Board of Adjustment has the following power relating to variations. Where by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property at the time of the original adoption of the regulations, or by reasons of exceptional topographical conditions, or other extraordinary and exceptional situation or condition of a specific piece of property, which conditions are not generally prevalent in the neighborhood, the strict application of the area regulations of this title would result in peculiar and exceptional difficulties to, or exceptional and undue hardship upon, the owner of such property. The board is hereby empowered to authorize upon an appeal relating to such property a variation from such strict application so as to relieve such difficulties or hardships. Now therefore be it resolved that the request to increase the size of the message display board to 40 square feet is hereby granted, provided that all other ordinances and regulations of the city of Washington are met. The city engineer is hereby directed to issue a building permit as described in accordance with the resolution of decision. Ardell Schillick.
No.
Alan Whitworth.
No.
Lloyd Miesner.
No.
Gwen Montal.
No.
By your vote, you did not pass the variance. Anything further to come before the board, Sal?
That's it, and we do not have any additional applications, so we do not have another meeting scheduled at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, folks.
What I will essentially do from what I've heard here tonight, when we have this discussion, that we are going to discuss the code, because at P&Z tonight as just another business. I do think that 18 square feet was a mistake. It did slide through. There was so much other discussion about the other regulations that I don't think it was talked about publicly as much at that meeting, and then the motion was never made. However, we still need some threshold that P&Z makes a recommendation to and council approves, obviously, but I will let them know that this board voted to basically withhold any variances until we move forward with that code amendment. So
That's clear.
put a little sense of urgency on it.
You need a motion to end the meeting.
Thank you. I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you, guys.